Hi,
All
everyone.
right.
There
Go
we
ahead.
go. We're
Sorry.
recording. It's okay. Good morning, everyone. My name is Missy Lindsay, and I am the Senior Marketing Coordinator with the Southern U.S. Trade Association, SUSTA. I'm not going to go into a long spiel about SUSTA today because we have so much to get into, and a lot of our companies on the call are seasoned vets. But I will say if you have any questions for SUSTA afterwards, please feel free to give me a call or send me an email. My information will be on an email that's going to follow up from this webinar. Victoria Nwasike is the president and CEO of Goldencrest Global. She has over 10 years of economic development and international business development experience. She's going to talk to you all about food safety certificates in different country markets. And she's also available for Q&A after this webinar. So if you have any questions, save them for the end, and we will have a Q&A portion. Any links or information that she is going to share with you throughout the webinar, I will provide with a follow-up email, so be aware of that as well. But for right now, I'm going to kick it off to Victoria, and we can learn a little bit more about food safety certificates. Thank you, Victoria.
Thank you so much, Missy. I'm so happy to be here this morning. As Missy stated, we're going to have a wonderful webinar today talking about food safety export certificates. And we'll start off a little bit about myself and my company. I'm with Goldencrest Global. Normally with the export readiness training side, we have myself and then Trish Souza, who's not here today, but she usually helps out with any kind of export readiness training that we provide. And a little bit about my previous experience, just briefly, as Missy said, I have extensive background in international trade. I was a trade manager for the Iowa International Trade Office, focusing on Asia, then also, of course, covered international business development, which is mainly foreign direct investment for the state of Iowa, non-practicing now, lawyer and attorney by trade. And I practice in international and litigation divisions for the Dentons Davis Brown law firm. Manage activities for offices in Europe, Japan, China, Taiwan, and Mexico for the state of Iowa, mainly focused on foreign direct investment and trade activities. Directed very large-scale trade missions to different countries with the governor of Iowa appointed to different boards for the EU and Midwest, and just present at conferences throughout Europe and Asia. So I also serve as an adjunct professor, which is why I always come back to training. I actually love training. And then I also was a science teacher in Washington, D.C. So this is part of my heart, which is why I love doing these trainings. I also have a master's in public policy from George Mason. So I have a very varied background from teacher to lawyer to now business owner, but very happy to be with you this morning. But let's go ahead and talk about what we're going to talk about today, which is a webinar on learning about food safety export certificates, which are very important. Let's talk about why we need them. And so that's just general information, but let's make sure we have a background that we all kind of have a base knowledge. So when exporting food-related products, you often need an export certificate regarding food safety, and those are usually issued from a U.S. federal agency. Typically, they can include the USDA's Phytosanitary and Sanitary certificates. Of course, Phytosanitary are like plant and vegetable products or items, and then sanitary certificates would be more for your meat. And then you have the FDA certificate of free sale. A lot of times the FDA certificates, which we'll get into great detail later, is really for processed products or dietary products or anything like that. So these are the main three certificates we're going to focus on during this webinar. Okay. We will learn about various certificates and review tools to navigate this key aspect of exporting your product abroad. A few things I want to discuss, and you'll see as we go along. I always say that exporting is an art and not really a science, because as you all know, every country has its own requirements. A lot of products have their own requirements. And so really what we do here is we give you the tools so that you can go ahead and figure out what is required for each country and for each product that you're dealing with. So this is going to be a great overview, and we'll pick out like a key country, a test country, and some test products, and I'll show you the process. So let's talk a little bit more about the process. So once again, an overview of this webinar. You're going to learn how to determine when a food safety export certificate is needed. It's very, very important to know if you need one or not. We're also going to learn how to access information regarding common certificates. We're going to focus on the two USDA ones, once again, Phytosanitary and Sanitary, and then the FDA Export Certificates too. And then finally, make sure you know the required forms and processes for obtaining those common certificates, the ones we just talked about. So that's what we're going to learn in an overview. We are going to try to get through all this information in an hour. I want to stress, like Missy stated, you will receive all these links, because we're going to go over a lot of links, and we're going to go all over these web pages, and it's going to be great information because I want to teach you how to do it. But never fear, the best thing to do right now is to really just pay attention and listen and look at the screen so you can kind of see what I'm doing. You will definitely get the links that I'm going over and from Missy in an email. So don't try to write down all the links and everything. It's really, really great if you can just kind of pay attention, kind of look at where I'm going and what I'm doing. All right, so the first thing is determining when an export certificate is needed. You need to understand, of course, whether a country requires an export certificate, whether it doesn't, and usually that depends on your product. And so all this information is very important to know. Well, basically for export in general, but specifically if you might need a certificate. So let's talk about foreign import requirements, because that's exactly what we utilize to determine if we need a certificate or not. It is the foreign requirements that a foreign country has in place to see if they will import your product, right? And they have the same rules to protect their citizens, just like the US has its own rules. Of course, so each country will have its own rules to make sure that the products that are coming in are safe. And we want to make sure we understand what those requirements are for various countries. So let's see why they're important. Once again, every country and region will have import requirements that must be adhered to. Foreign import requirements are important to learn about regarding packaging, your products, labeling, certification, and shipping requirements. So they cover a whole broad number of things, which we're going to see. But we're more concerned about this topic, which is food safety certificates. So reviewing a country's foreign import requirements is essential to determine if you need a food safety export certificate or not. So let's go ahead and see, how do we do that? How do we determine the foreign import requirements for any country? And that's why I love USDA, because they like create magic and they have wonderful tools for us to use. So really, truthfully, we just go to a magic USDA website. I think it's magic because it's wonderful. It has all the information there. So the USDA has a web page with the foreign import requirements for major markets and countries. And we'll get on this page in a second. The information on the web pages includes the country export guide. Normally, there's like a master export guide for each country. The FAIRS report, which we'll get into in more detail. That actually has the actual foreign import requirements for that country in minute detail. Okay. And then the export certification report. And that's the magic paper that we want for this topic, because they tell you exactly which certificates you need for your product in order to go ahead and export it into the foreign country. So let's go ahead and just look at this together. You'll get this link, so no worries. Let me do a new share. All right. When you get your link, this magic page will come up. It's not magic, but I love it because it has all the countries and all the regions, right? And if you click on the specific countries, it will provide for you the two most important documents that we're going to cover today. Okay, so it has pretty much every region. Okay, so we're going to focus on Japan, and I'm going to just show you Japan because, like I said, every country is different. So I just picked a country. Okay, when you click on this, and they're all similar, when you click on the link, you have general information, you have contact information here. But the great thing are these things. You have an exporter guide, the food and agricultural import regulations and standards country report, which we'll go into in great details. This is a FAIRS report that says all the import regulations. And then most importantly for us, you'll have the FAIRS, our food and agriculture import regulations and standards export certificate report. Okay, and these are the two great documents that we're going to be utilizing, but this one in particular, this export certificate report. And we're going to see, because we're going to do a deep dive with Japan with a couple products, and then we're going to go back and we're going to pick another country, right? And we're going to see that these same two documents are going to help us with that country. Okay, so let's first go back. Well, let me actually show you one more thing. The good thing is, for Japan, they have a separate website, which is a foreign agricultural website, the Foreign Agricultural Service. And so they have a separate website with specific information on export guidance. And it has the same information here. Okay, so sometimes you'll see me going back to this page. But as you saw, when we go back to this major page, these same documents are here. Okay, but sometimes you'll see me go here because it has also sanitary, phytosanitary, and this is all the information we'll be looking at together, mainly these two reports, and then, this plant one, and then this for the sanitary certificate, this one right here. All right, so let's go ahead and go back. All right, we're going to go over this in more detail. So the Food and Agriculture Import Regulations and Standards, that's the first report we talked about, the FAIRS country report. This report is so important because it provides information on ingredients and manufacturing process lists, because in Japan, you need to usually submit an ingredients process list and a manufacturing process list. So it has information about that, about labeling, very specific requirements about labeling. And so it has information about packaging, about food and food safety. That's more about the additives that are allowed or disallowed in the country. Of course, the USDA Sanitary and Phytosanitary Certificates, ding, ding, ding. That's what we're going to go into detail today. Export certifications, import procedures, duties, documents, rules of origin, requirements, shipping samples requirement, and then also trade facilitation. So this one report covers all this great information. And I'm going to show you, there's one of these reports for every single country. So no fear, right? No fear. If you go to a trade show and, and someone contacts you and you're like, oh, I have a great opportunity to send products to, Dubai, or send products to Philippines. I don't know what to do. Okay. That link I just gave you, you just go to the map, look up Philippines. Of course, and that information is there. Okay. The next most important thing is this FAIRS Export Certificate Report, which we're going to go over more detail together. But this provides a list of all export certificates required for that country. It includes the purpose of the specific export certificate, so it gives you a little bit of background, why you need those certificates, specific attestations that are required on the export certificates if you have to attest to something, government certificate legal entry requirements, and then any other certification or accreditation requirements. All this information is going to be on this one report that the USDA has for free for anybody. So let's go ahead and we're going to look at it in more detail, but a closer look. USDA Sanitary and Phytosanitary Certificates. So once again, when shipping your product, you will have to include requisite export certifications with the shipment. So they either go with the shipment, which we'll look at in a second, or you can submit them electronically. Okay, the USDA issues a certificate, it's put on in a database, and the foreign country can just go ahead and retrieve it. And these are all based on the import requirements of the foreign country. We're going to take a closer look at the export certifications using the foreign import requirements for Japan. And let's go ahead and do a deep dive there. We were just on these documents. Remember, this is a FAIRS report. We're going to really look at it together. That includes all of the foreign import requirements for Japan. And then once again, our wonderful certificate report. Okay, we're going to look at that together, and then you can determine what certificates you need. Of course, this will be specific to Japan, but let's go ahead and start this process together. Now make sure I share my screen. All right, so this is a handy dandy export guidance section. I will once again say, remember, you can always get to it from here. Like I said, selected Japan. And this is there's a specific Japanese website, so you can go here. or once again, you can just pull these same resources up down here. But let's go ahead and look at this in more detail. So first, let's look at the FAIR's country report. That is the general report that has all the foreign import requirements. Then we'll go ahead and get to our more specific certificate report, which is what we're going to really cover in great detail today. But let's just see what the country report has for us. Okay, this is the country report. Let me scroll up because you got me to my last thing. You always want to make sure with the country report that it has a very recent date, at least in the same year, right? And usually if you pull it from where I showed you to pull it, that master map or that map, when you click on the country and go down, scroll down to the resources and click on this FAIR's report, Food and Agricultural Import Regulations and Standards, country report, you should have the latest one. Okay, and these are also the game reports. This is one of the game reports there for the country. So let's just take a look at it together. Okay, so this is Japan. This is the FAIR's annual country report. And this report is an overview and update of Japan's food and agriculture import regulations and standards. Okay, and this pretty much also, and it also references for more information on Japan's certification requirements, which we're going to really get into, you can go see the FAIR's Export Certificate report, and we'll get to that in a second. All right, I just want to do a brief scroll down. We're not going to go into great detail because we're really going to focus on the certificates. But if you've never seen this, and some of you all may have not, this is stuff that we cover in the general export readiness training. But if you haven't seen this, I want to make sure you're kind of aware. But you can see that they have food laws, labeling requirements, how to label fresh food, how to label processed food, food additives, and they have information on country of origin labeling. If your foods are organic, what you need to have there. If you have GE food, genetically engineered food. If you have an alcoholic beverage, there's special labeling for that. Okay. So all this great information, any kind of nutritional claims or health claims, they have the labels that you need for that. Of course, this is only for Japan. Packaging and container regulations. And once again, food additives regulations, pesticides and other contaminants. Of course, they go over the established levels you can have for each chemical. Then they have, any other requirements for its regulations. And all this great information. Trademark information, if you need to trademark and brand name and intellectual property, that information is in here too. And then require importation documents, and then information about trade facilitation. So this 21-page document has pretty much all the stuff you need to know about getting your product into Japan. Okay, so this is like an overview. They kind of talk about the 7 major laws governing food and agriculture products in Japan. And really, they kind of talk about the major government agencies. You'll see this a lot: Ministry of Health and Labor and Welfare, and the Ministry of Agriculture, Forestry, and Fishery. So those are the 2 main ones you're going to see. But if you just scroll down, they have, the major laws and what governs all the information here. Okay, and then they have labeling requirements, like I said, and you can kind of look at this. The thing is, a lot of these are in Japanese, as you can imagine. If you click on them, usually if you have any modern browser, it'll translate it for you. You don't want to fully rely on this translation because it's Google Translate, but at least nowadays you're able to kind of find more information about, your product. And if you click on a link within the document, you usually can at least kind of figure out what's going on, right? So information about labeling requirements, and we're not going to go into all this in great detail. Organic labeling, like I just said, and they have charts and graphs and all this stuff. I do want to show you quickly information about importation documents. See if I can go down. Scroll down. Okay, import procedures. Okay, and so you can read this, but this agency is a lead agency ensuring that imported food products comply with the Food Sanitation Act. Okay, and there is a flow chart outlining the import procedures. And firms seeking to import food additives, containers, and all the information must submit a notification form of importation of foods. So, anytime that you're going to ship to Japan, you need to have this form. Okay. And so you can click on it and see. And like I said, they have a flow chart, they say, outlining the procedures. These are all the procedures for shipping to Japan. And they have a nice little click, but all this is in this wonderful magic document, right? The FAIRS report. Okay. And so then they have like the required import documents. So the import notification, which we just saw, the notification form, right? You'll have to click on that and get that form. Export certificates if required. And then we're going to see this FAIRS export certificate tells us right here where to get it. Okay. And then you need to have documents showing ingredients, additives, and manufacturing process. You always have to have some kind of documents if required, showing your ingredients and additives. And then, if you have some test results that's needed, and you need to go and comply with that. But basically, we're focused more on these export certificates. But I just wanted to show you that they have these wonderful documents that really cover everything you need. So let's go ahead and go back. That was a FAIRS country report. Now let's go into our main document for today, which is the FAIRS Export Certificate Report. See how we're doing on time. Okay. So this wonderful report really only focuses on what we want to talk about today, export certificates, right? And you want to check the date. It looks pretty recent. Okay. And it has a list of all export certificates required by the government. And then they go into the purpose of the export certificates and any kind of citations. I have a problem saying that word, and all the other information that you might need. So let's go ahead and see, and we're going to do a deeper dive. We're going to pick a product. It's going to be an apple, and I'm going to pick a product, beef, and we're going to go into this in great detail. But you can see if you have fresh vegetables and fruit and semi-dry fruit, then you're going to need a Phytosanitary certificate. Okay, and it's this PPQ form 577. And we're going to go into great detail of how to get more information, where this form is and all that. And you'll have links to all this. Okay. And then if we have meat, we have all these forms we need. We'll look in more detail. We need this form and this form and this form for beef. And, you need quite a few forms, right? And then if you have dairy products, egg products, and we're not going to go into all these various products because like I said, it is an art, not a science, because every country and every product is different, right? So if you have dairy products, then you're going to look here. You have egg products here, okay, and casings and all this other great stuff, tuna. So you have all your great information. All right, so let's go ahead and go back. Okay, and we've covered this page. So let's do a closer look at the Phytosanitary certificate. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at the federal Phytosanitary certificate, and we're going to choose an apple. Okay. And we already know, we saw that chart that we're going to need this form 577. Okay. And we can get all this information out of that export guidance paper or link that we just saw. So let's go ahead and just see. We're going to go over the steps to get this sanitary certificate together. But the main thing you need to do is go to this wonderful website. This is the website that has all the information about plant health export information. And then once you go in there, you're going to determine if your specific product needs a phytosanitary certificate. All right, so let's go ahead and try this now. And I'm going to do it from here only because I want to show you how you can access this very easily. This is the same, document that we were on, or the same web page. They have this link right here that we're going to be using, this plant health export information. Now, if we go into that FAIRS certificate, let's see if I can find it.
Victoria, you might have to reshare your screen.
Oh, thank you. I always need that reminder. Okay, so I'll go back. So on that major page that we've been looking at for Japan, and okay, remember with these are the FAIRS report. Right down here, you have the section of sanitary and phytosanitary export information. The link we're going to be using that has all the information about a phytosanitary certificate is this one right here. Okay, but I also want to show you, if I can get in here. Can I go back? Well, I'll just click on this again. If you look on the FAIRS export certificate report, And remember, we saw that what we needed was this vegetable one. We needed this. If you go down and it tells you more information of why you need it. And that link is still here, the same link that we're going to be using. Okay. So it tells you why you need that certificate. And it just tells you the reason why is because, of course, you want to go ahead and they want to make sure that that you can attest that the products permitted under the agreement or protocols actually comply with certain phytosanitary measures. And we're going to get into this in more detail. Okay, so you can click on any of these links and it'll kind of pretty much still get you to where we're going to when we kind of talk about the website for phytosanitary. So let's go into this website together. Okay, so this is the website, and this website pretty much contains all the information you need to know about getting a phytosanitary certificate. So once you go on that FAIRS certificate report, and if you see that you need a phytosanitary, once again, usually that is unprocessed vegetables or plants, okay, then you normally will need this. And this has all the information you need, okay? So the first thing we're actually going to determine is whether your product needs a certificate, right? And you can look here at the ineligible commodities because these are the commodities that they will not issue a certificate for. Okay, so let's look at that. Okay, so these are products that cannot that you cannot get a certificate for. So these are animals and animal products, baby food, bakery goods, beverages, bottled commodity, broom corn, all these types. And usually a country might ask for an FDA certificate for these. So you'll double check. Some countries might, because that's more for processed food. But once again, any of these items, even if your importer's like, oh, I want a phytosanitary certificate, if it's any of these items, then pretty much the USDA will not give you a certificate for these. You can kind of just see if your product falls into this. Okay, so that's easy enough to go and figure out. You want to go ahead and figure out, quickly if you don't need a certificate. Now, if you do need a certificate, let's go back over on this page. Then there's a website you can go to, and I'll give you the link for you to make sure that your product does need a certificate. So you want to view the ineligible commodities list. And you can see most of those are any kind of processed products. You won't need a certificate. However, you can utilize this database. Okay, it's called Phytosanitary Export Database to determine if you're a specific product. Now, when we saw on that FAIRS certificate report, it just said plants, vegetables, but how do I know if my plant needs one or my vegetable, right? So we want a resource that actually tells us if my particular plant actually needs it. And so this is what we're going to use here. You'll get this link, and this allows you to see if your particular product or plant, vegetable product actually needs a certificate. And it's also based on the country, of course, because every country is different. So I'm actually going to do a new share. And you will see it says that my login intent was invalid. Sometimes when you try to do it multiple times, it won't let you do it again. So you have to kind of go into the system again, but you'll get a link. And so when that happens, I just go into this program manual. You'll see it all over. There's links to this export database that you can utilize to get in. So this is what a database looks like. And you're going to go ahead and pick a country. We're going to use Japan. And in this case, we're using the apple. Right, to see. So let's see, Japan. Okay, and so I'm doing view country information commodity. All right, and I'm saying Japan, and it lets me go ahead and search my commodity to see if my commodity actually needs a certificate or not, my specific commodity for this specific country. So you have to actually use the botanical name. So for apple, that is this one right here. So I'll do a search. And then I'm going to use the fruit. And you can see the commodity summary. Okay. These are just important notes, and it just kind of tells you like updates and stuff, but you want to scroll down. And it tells me exactly if my product needs a phytosanitary certificate. Okay, so it says fruit from California, Oregon, and Washington, you need a phytosanitary certificate, and it tells you what kind. Red and golden delicious, and all the different time, they have those. Fruit from all other state, you can't even send it to Japan unless you have an import permit. And so, once you go to this list, it'll say, okay, well, basically, if I'm not from California, Oregon, or Washington, I need a phytosanitary certificate. But if I'm from all of these other states, basically, unless I have some kind of import permit, and you can inquire about that, usually from your buyer, to see what can be done. Okay. And then it says if it's dried fruit, then it is allowed. And I guess there's no state requirement or limitation. And it says a phytosanitary certificate is required. Okay. So this is just great information to have, and it's country specific, and it's a free database. But that's how you get from that general information on the report, right? Like, oh, if you're a vegetable, go ahead. But you won't know unless you go into Japan, unless you go into your actual product, that really they only take it from 3 states, right? For Japan, and and they'll take dried apples, but other than that, you're kind of out of luck, and they won't even issue a phytosanitary export database because it's prohibited. Okay, so let's go ahead and go back to more information. Let me do a new share. So we looked at this the main website, and we're going to be on this when we talk about all the phytosanitary requirements. We first need to determine if our specific product requires a phytosanitary certificate. Okay, and we do that. First, we kind of look at the ineligible commodities list, which is right on that master page, okay, to see. And then we can do a deep dive into my specific product, apple, okay, using the botanical name, and you'll get this link and later in the actual email, and then you can determine your actual need for a phytosanitary certificate. Now, let's go ahead and say, if you need a certificate, there is the link on that major page we'll go into called Export Certificates and Application Forms. In that section, you will find the various phytosanitary certificates. The good thing about this is they don't have specific certificates that are different with different countries, unlike the sanitary certificates, which are for meat. So phytosanitary, these are the only certificates available. We'll go over all of them. The first form you have is the application for inspection and certification of your product. So no matter what, if you need a certificate, you're going to need to utilize Form 572. And we'll look at all these certificates in 1 second. Okay, this is just another form that allows you to have an attachment sheet. So if you run out of room for your actual certificates, you can add that. This is the actual form we need, as you see right here, Form 577. This is the form we need. We saw on the FAIRS report, and that's the actual phytosanitary certificate. Then they also have this other form, which is very, very, very rarely used. They also can issue a certificate for processed plant products. Those are only 2 or 3 products allowed under this certificate, and it's very rare. And we'll see when that's used. So you will likely not be utilizing this one. And then finally, if you need to re-export a product, there's a specific certificate for that. So normally, what you're normally going to be utilizing is the application, and this application is for all these certificates. And then this form right here, Form 577. Okay, so let's go ahead and just look at these in more detail. And I'm going back to my master page for phytosanitary certificates. It's all one page, okay? And we've already looked at ineligible commodities, okay? And then we will look at this right here, export certificates and application forms. And this has all the forms there for you. And they're all right here. Now we'll talk about it. You will actually be submitting this normally electronically within their database, right? So you won't actually be, printing this out and that kind of stuff and, submitting this manually. There is, of course, an electronic system that you'll be using, which we'll see in a second. But downloadable forms, this is the application, right? You're going to use this application 9 times out of 10 because this is what you're needed to complete the certification forms. So let's just see, a form designed to provide the information needed to complete forms 577, that's what we need for our Apple, 578 and 579, and to serve as a worksheet for the certifying official conducting the inspection. Okay, and so basically this is the worksheet that you'll use. And so that is very easy for you to go ahead and fill out the other forms. So let's go ahead and just look at it. You can get it right online, very basic information. So this is an application that you will actually fill out. Okay, and it just has the quantity and name of your produce and the botanical name, numbers, number description of packages, basically basic information that almost all export forms have. Okay. We'll go back. So that's the application, right? This is an attachment sheet. So you only need this if you run out of room for these forms. This is our main form, Phytosanitary Certificate. And 9 times out of 10, once we look at our country and see if we need a certificate, this is a certificate that's going to be used, this one. And this is what it looks like. So once they gather information from the application, then the inspector will go ahead and put information, and we'll talk about the process in a second. But basically, the inspector who is going to certify your export will fill out this form. And this is the actual certificate. Sanitary certificate, and this is certificate number. Okay, so all this is online. This is all available. You'll get the link to this page. I just want to explain all this information to you. This is an export certificate. Once again, this is rarely used, and we'll show you when, but really it's only for like I think pesticide, not fertilizer or something like that, but very narrow. And we'll show you when this is used. And so this is, you'll probably never use this one. And this is if you have to re-export a product. You got a product from a third country, and you want to go ahead and re-export it. If that's your issue, then you would use this form. And it looks very similar to the other four. Okay, so let's go ahead and go back. And once again, we were right here where it says export certificates and application forms right there. And that gave you all those. Let's go ahead and see that weird, I'm going to say it, that weird certificate that they never use. They kind of show you what it's eligible for, and it is only eligible for feed, nuts in bulk that are salted, and protein. That's it. So if you don't have any of these products, you won't be using this form. You will normally be using the main form that we talked about, which I think is 577. Okay, so let's go ahead and go back. And we're almost done with phytosanitary because we have to move on to our other one very quickly, sanitary. All right, so we're looking at this again. The phytosanitary certificate for an apple. We found that we're going to use form 577. We know how to get this form, right? We know what it looks like in the application form. Now you can use this phytosanitary certificate issuance tracking system. Okay, and this is a tracking system that can be used. This is how you would actually obtain your certificate and apply for your certificate. Everything is going to be used electronically. And so this is a system you'll use. And we'll look at that in more detail. Okay. They also have the user fees for the export certificates online. And then you can file the sanitary certificate online using eFido. And those are for participating companies or partner countries. Not all countries will allow you to go ahead and submit your certificate online. But we have found, especially with COVID and things being more streamlined, we find more and more countries willing to go ahead and partner with the USDA. And so that way they can just receive your certificate electronically and not manually. So, but Japan is not one of those countries right now. And then you also can find a local certification specialist on the web. Okay. And then we'll also look at one last thing. We'll just kind of go over all these. There's a great Q&A section, and we're going to go over that so you can kind of understand the process of getting the certificate. And then you want to make sure, of course, you check your foreign import requirements for additional certification certifications needed and documents. So once again, this is just about the export certificates. We saw with the FAIRS report, you need a whole bunch of other stuff to consider, right? So you want to make sure you'll be mindful. And once again, your phytosanitary certificate will be provided to the freight forwarder if it's manual, included in the shipment, or for e-phyto countries, then of course you're just going to submit it online. But let's go ahead and just look at this one last time in more detail. Just play around this page one last time so we can kind of look at all the information. Can you share? Okay, so this is the page once again, our master page. I want to just show you, this is the link to the system where you actually submit your request to get a certificate. And this is how, of course, the certificates are granted, and it's like a whole system. So I don't have access to the system because I don't have a product to actually ship. But if you want to use this phytosanitary certificate, you need to use this system. And there's information about how to actually go ahead and set up an account with that. Okay. The other information that's very important is user fees. So you'll note the information is right here for your certificate. And it has a breakdown so you can see. And then finally, for you to find an expert certification specialist in your area, let's say you have questions or anything like that, you can contact someone in your area. I am based in North Carolina, so I'll just pick up North Carolina, but you can see they'll actually have a name and email address. And so if you have questions or issues, you can definitely feel free to reach out to the person in your state that deals with export certificates. So I'm just showing you that all this wonderful information is on this one page. So it's not tricky. You just need to kind of know what you're doing here. Now, the final thing I'm going to show you is the Q&A section. This is actually this. You really can't tell, but this is literally the Q&A section. It has great information. And so it has, what is the purpose of a phytosanitary certificate? You know, all the stuff that we just went over. So we're not going to go into detail. I do want to cover right here. I think it has a section for what are your responsibilities. Let's see. Okay, right here. What are the responsibilities of an exporter shipper? And I would take some time. I would definitely take some time to look at all these Q&A, this whole section. But I would take some time definitely to go ahead and just understand the responsibilities of the exporter. And really a lot of stuff that, nothing should be new because we talked about all these terms, but, you need to apply in writing for the inspection, sampling, testing, and certification of commodities offered for export. Certificates can be issued at the point of origin. So at your location, at the port where the shipment will transit, or the actual port of export. Okay, and this is the form we looked at. This is an application form, right? For export can be requested from the nearest authorized certification officer. We saw that there's a little, you can look at that per state. We just saw how to do that office, or download the form by clicking here. And we saw how we can download this form. You need to contact the agent or the office far enough in advance of the shipping or loading dates to allow the officer to determine the phytosanitary import requirements. They're probably going to just look at the FAIRS report like we did, and conduct required sampling, inspecting, testing, etc. in advance of the shipping or loading dates and specified time limits. Okay, and so it's just great information. So if you don't really understand the process, you need to make sure that you schedule your inspection and in far enough time, but not too much time. You need to make sure that you're in complying with whatever time limits are provided by the country. And that's some information that, of course, the officer, if you look up the officer in your state and start reaching out to them, they'll know. Okay, so basically these are just great information for you to know. Of course, you need to make sure you make things available, like the space that you want. If you have a specific location, you want to make sure that things are available, or the product is easily accessible to the officer. This says very clearly, exporters are responsible for ensuring official documents are translated to English. Right. So you can have bilingual information, but English has to be one of the languages. So all of your requirements pretty much are right here. Okay, so that's very helpful for you to kind of know. So this is the last part I really kind of leave you with is basically the Q&A section. One final section, very quickly, is this ePhyto. You heard me mention it. Like I said, normally, basically, nowadays, more countries have signed on to this ePhyto procedure, which basically means that the foreign country is able to access your certificate right here online. Okay, and there's a whole, there's a whole sheet explaining how this works. And so you can kind of look at that at your leisure. And then they have the trading partners participating in this system. And if you look at this list, you'll see Japan's not on the list, but there are a lot of other countries. So you'll be looking at this one. Trading partners receiving ePhyto from this organization from the U.S. exports for exports from the U.S. And so all of these countries actually, you don't have to send, you can actually, they can receive it electronically through the ePhyto system. But like I said, not Japan. So that's something that you'll definitely have to kind of look at and make sure you're aware of. So that is the overview for phytosanitary certificates. We are going to now rush through the sanitary certificates for beef. And then we're going to look very briefly at the, the FDA certificates. So all right, so let's look at sanitary certificates. We're going to pick beef. We're going to keep the same country, which would be Japan. And how do you determine which certificates you need? Very easily, we're going to look at the FAIR certificate report, of course, right? And then we're going to see that we're going to need all these certificates. So let's look at that together very briefly. You guys are going to be pros at this, I mean, honestly. Okay, so once again, this is our handy dandy, the FAIR certificate report. We're now looking for beef, not apples anymore. So we're going to look for all of the certificates required for beef. And there's going to be a few of them. So meat and poultry products, we're going to need form 9060-5, okay, which is an attestation of wholesomeness. We're also going to need this form 9290-1, which is specific to Japan. So please make sure you understand some forms are specific to specific countries. Unlike phytosanitary certificates, they're all the same certificate. You just have to know if you need one or not. Sanitary certificates, some of them, not all of them, but some of them are country specific. So you must look at that. And then the other document you need for beef and beef products is this letterhead certificate for beef and beef products in Japan. Okay, so you need 3 separate items. Okay, so, and we have that all right here. We have the form 9065. Form 9066 is the application. So there's always an application form. Then 9290 certificate of export specific to Japan, and then a letterhead certificate. So you need all these certifications, right? But we found them in one place. Okay, and let's go ahead and we're going to use this export guide as to actually kind of look at these in greater detail. Once again, I want to stress that some forms are country specific, and we're going to look at how we access these forms. And then also there is a country specific page, okay, for sanitary certificates. So you have all the information for each country, which is found in the export library. So we're going to play around with some of these. Let's go ahead and why don't we start with this one? Yeah, if I do cancel, it actually goes. Okay. So this is just general information about export guidance to go ahead and figure out how to actually use sanitary certificates. What's most important for you to know is like they have a checklist, and this checklist actually talks about the export library, which we'll look into, and it just kind of gives you some general information about these certificates. Make sure you have these forms, which we'll look at together, and just other markings and other things that you need. This is generic information. Okay, and you have a link to this, but we're going to really get in, for the interest of time, and the country specific information. Okay, so first, let me go ahead and show you the forms, and then we're going to actually go into a deeper dive into the country. There is a handy dandy actual link that you can use to have all the forms pulled together for your sanitary certificate. And if you want to, you can actually do a search for a form, but we know we need form 9060-5. Okay, so we're going to need this form. And we know because the affairs report told us, these are the completion instructions. Okay, so to learn how to complete it, they tell us exactly the information, what we need to know. So we'll know how to do that. Okay, and then so those were the completion instructions. And the actual certificate, let me make sure I pull up the right one. Yeah, is this one. Okay, so this is the actual meat and poultry export certificate of wholesomeness. Okay, and that's the first form that we needed. It is form 9060-5. And you can look at this basic information, you know. And so this is just an example you can see online. Okay, the other certificate we needed was 9060-6. Which is the application. All right, and then the application is where you'll start. And the application pretty much is all the information you're going to need, of course, to go ahead and have them fill out the actual certificate for you. And they have all the instructions there. And the good thing is they always have a lot of instructions for you. So that should be pretty easy. And like I said, all these forms are right here together at the same place. The other certificate you need is right here, the certificate to export to Japan. But I'm going to go to this because sometimes that one acts up kind of. So I'm going to go to this one. It's still the same thing. And now you see this is a third document, but this certificate should match the number of your actual export certificate. So these are the documents you need. And so it seems like a lot, but it's not, because essentially you just need to look up the FAIRS report. And you can go to, you'll have a link to this form page, and you can pull up the actual certificates and applications to see exactly what you need. Now, the other information I want to go ahead and share with you is the export library. The wonderful thing about this is they have an export library that has all the information for each country, again, but this is only for sanitary certificates. Okay, so briefly, I want to see how I am on time. Okay, we're getting there. Briefly, we're going to look up Japan. I believe it's on 3. Japan. All right, and it has all the information you need about obtaining a sanitary certificate for Japan. So it gives you information about the export mark, and saying exporters may apply, the mark, and to outside each container, or a securely enclosed pallet. It kind of gives you all the instructions about your export mark and information there. And then it actually gives you the export requirements for each of these products. If you have egg products, you'll look there. All right. Eligible products, of course, these are going to be meat products. So eligible products. If you have beef and beef products, then you need to look at this requirement. Okay, these are the requirements for beef. And then you have ineligible products, things that cannot come in. And so basically for beef, you know, there's some beef products that cannot be imported. So you want to make sure you look at that. But I'm just trying to show you that it's all one place. Processing information that you need to know about that. Okay. And finally, I want to just go to this documentation requirement, because this is pretty much where we're spending our time. So it says for mixed meat products and all relevant establishment numbers for the slaughter or manufacturing plant must be listed on the form. Okay, so if you have mixed meat, but basically these are the forms and we looked at them. We need to obtain this form 90960, which we know now. Okay, we also need this form 92901, which we know we looked at. Okay, and then we also need another form, which is the letterhead certificate. Now that wasn't in the generic forms, but but like I said, you can always go to this more specific country database, and this is an example of the letterhead certificate for beef and beef products to Japan. Of course, you needed that because in the FAIR certificate report, this was included as something that you needed. So it's not tricky. You just need to make sure that you have all the links to know kind of where you need to look, right? And it has all your information that you need. And so this is information right here for the sanitary certificates. So let's look at this one more time. We needed a sanitary certificate for beef products. We had to determine how we're going to find it. So we looked at the FAIRS report. The FAIRS report was that handy dandy chart, told us we needed one. We needed this form, that form. We know that we can find all these forms very easily by just using that form link that I showed you. You can pull up all the forms so you know what they look like. And then, of course, you have like the letterhead certificate for beef and beef products, and there's an example there. Let me go back. And then, once again, some forms are country specific, and then you can utilize this export library right here to look up your specific country. Okay, and they'll have the information specifically about your specific country. Okay, and that's pretty much the process for looking up a sanitary certificate in a nutshell. So let's look at a few more things. For FISIS form, if the country is not active in the database and basically they're not online, then you need to actually download the application form and present it manually, as you can imagine, to the inspector assigned to your establishment. So of course, you have regular inspections, and so this will be another document you will give them for inspection so that they can go and approve you for exports to Japan. The inspector will sign it and then also kind of put the information needed in there. Of course, if the country is active online, and Japan is active in this system for sanitary certificates, not for Phyto like we saw. So sometimes the country is active for one system and not the other. So you want to just double check. But if the country is active, then it's much easier because basically everything is completed online. Okay, and then the certificate is actually issued online, and you'll have that. And so once again, if it's a country that's not online, the completed export certificate is presented for signature to the appropriate inspector, usually inspected, with all the other documents that you need. And then, of course, the copy of the information will be sent with your shipment. That's if they're not online, of course, because you still have to send the original certificate with your shipment. You also need to be very familiar with the export mark and label requirements. And if you take some time to kind of review all that information on the country specific page, you will get, a lot of information about your export markings and your label requirements there, but make sure you're familiar with them. They'll be different per country. And then once again, make sure to check the foreign import requirements with your importer, because a lot of times, some things are the responsibility of your importer, like your label requirements. However, they'll ask you to do them, of course, right? So you want to make sure that you speak to your importer to make sure that you understand also what's needed. Your importer on the ground will definitely have a lot more knowledge than you would, as far as what's needed to make sure that the product gets into. So you want to make sure you definitely are talking to your importer on the ground. So we're going to fly to the last section, which are FDA Export Certificates. And so once again, you want to check the country's FAIRS report. We know what that means, to determine if this is needed for your product. And it's often used for processed foods and dietary foods. So there's about 3 different certificates that the FDA gives out. Once again, this would be more for processed foods. So it's available for conventional foods, food additives. This is a certificate to a foreign government. This is one certificate. This one's available for conventional foods, food additives, food contact substances, and infant formula. And basically, you are certifying that your food meets the requirements of the FDA Act for marketing in the U.S. And so it pretty much says the certificate states that your product can be legally marketed in the U.S. and exported from the U.S. So if you have this requirement, then you'll use this certificate. There's another very popular certificate, which is FDA Certificate of Free Sale. And this is only available for dietary supplements, medical foods, and foods for special dietary use. And the FDA does not charge a fee for this certificate. So you'll see in the FAIRS report if you need this type of certificate, but usually that will go for if you're claiming some kind of dietary, making some claims or it's like a supplement or something like that. And basically you might need this certificate. And finally, the last certificate they offer is a certificate of exportability. This is pretty much for conventional foods and additives and, infant formulas. They cannot legally be marketed in the US, technically, but based on the requirements of the FD&C Act, it can be legally exported. So you're not certifying that this, that it can be used in the US, but the FDA gives a certification that it can be exported. And so that's the third type of export certificate. You will get some great information and links about this online, but we'll kind of look at this together. This process is completely online, just like pretty much all the certificates. And there's like a little portal you can use. But let's go ahead and kind of look at this one last time together before we end this. So you'll get this link, and this is the FDA, U.S. Food and Drug Administration, and they have a handy dandy site that talks about food export certificates. Once again, your FAERS report will let you know if you need one of these, but they talk about the different types. So we talked about a certificate to a foreign government, right? And then they have a little bit about the pricing and the fee. So this is $175 for the first certificate, $155 for, And then you have the certificate of exportability, the second type, and the other one is certificate of free sale. We're not so much interested in the cosmetics and that kind of stuff. So these will be the three main ones that you'll probably be looking at. Now, you have a lot of links over here, which you can kind of play at your leisure. One of the great things is like the frequently asked questions. And you can really kind of get more information about the export certificates online and how are they issued. And then this is like they have samples of what these certificates look like, right? So you can kind of see, but it'll take you about 2 minutes just for you to play around in this site and kind of learn more about it. Okay, and then you have, of course, the online process. And if you click right there, it will kind of teach you, because you have to have login and stuff, how you can get these certificates online, and they're issued online. So this is basically the basic information about FDA certificates. And like I said, you'll have this link for you. And not every country requires it, but you'll see in your FAERS report if you do need one. So one final thing we'll go ahead and look at. Okay, we're going to just briefly kind of before we wrap up, look at this portal. And we know, remember, the USA has a web page for all foreign import requirements. And we're going to go and just look quickly at the United Arab Emirates. Let's just look at that really fast. And you're going to see how much you know and how much you learned that fast. But countries and regions, very simple. You'll have, we're going to go ahead and look at United Arab Emirates. Okay, same general information. You go down here. We have the country report, the FAERS country report, and then of course you have the export certificate report. We're going to look at this one. Okay, and once again, it has the same matrix that we've seen before. A few things are different. They let you know all products, the UAE requires a certificate of origin. Okay, and that you didn't see that for the Japanese report, right? You will notice very clearly there is no pork, of course. Right, so that's going to be a glaring obvious, issue. They tell you very, very quickly right here, if you have pretty much beef, bovine meat, you need, and we know what all these forms look like, right? So we know the 9065, we're going to have a link that you can go right to those forms. And this might actually kind of get you there directly. It does. Okay, so so you need these forms. Okay, and then of course you're going to need a halal slaughter certificate. And so you can kind of look at here, they have a library and you can find an approved Islamic organization. So once again, every country is different, right? So this is completely different from Japan, but you'll definitely need to know. So if you have any of these type of meats, you're going to need these forms, and then you're going to need the halal certificate. And this is just all, like I said, and you definitely won't see any pork here, right? And then one thing is kind of different here is they have for processed products. Well, you can see right here, they have like, of course, like the final sanitary certificate if you need those forms, right? So fresh plants, we know exactly what these forms look like, and we know how to maneuver that too. And then finally, for all other products not listed above, this applies to shelf-stable processed products. They require FDA certificate. And we know how to find that too, right? So they require FDA certificate to a foreign government, okay? And so they'll have the same links that we actually went over. And so you can also use, and it's very easy now, of course, because it's online, it can be, and so for all other products that are not specific to this, which is pretty much all processed products, basically, you need an FDA certificate. So that's different from Japan, right? But there are countries that require it, which is why we went over here. And now, if you kind of take some time to play around a little bit more of that, but at least you have the links exactly to find it. So once again, once you actually know the FAIRS report and you kind of know how to maneuver those websites, which is kind of what we went over, then you should be really set to understand how you need to find information on your phytosanitary or sanitary certificates. I do want to just talk briefly about SUSTA's export readiness training. We found this training to be useful. We actually provide a readiness training for various companies. We're going to have one coming up in the first quarter of 2022, and basically includes 3 sessions or modules. So it's a comprehensive training. This is only one section that we teach. There's actually 12 total, and it really is geared to agribusinesses. So it really teaches you how to utilize those resources specific to your type of businesses. The trainings are usually completed over a course of a few weeks, and then you also receive a wonderful certificate when you're done. So if you found this training to be useful or you want more information, I would recommend at this point, I believe for our next training session that's coming up next quarter, we'll be able to self-sign up. Before we had a nomination process, so you should be able to sign up yourself. But I just wanted to kind of showcase what we covered during that extensive training. But it's really good if you have someone new to your company who needs to learn more about exporting. If you want a deeper dive and really understand how these things work, it's very, very, very beneficial. And we've had great success with a lot of companies. So the first module was really developing your export readiness skills, how to develop an export plan, classify your products, research markets, and we give you all these type of tools and links for that. And then we talk about the tools of the trade. The stuff we talk about today is just right here, the foreign import requirements. That's only a very small topic of all the stuff we talk about, but we covered that today. Pricing products for export markets, using international terms of sale, Incoterms, find buyers and partners. And then we talk about module 3, getting products to global customers, navigating shipping logistics, foreign import requirements, export documentation, bills of lading, all that great stuff. And then of course, all the financing, letters of credit and sales and insurance and all that. So this is a wonderful curriculum SUSTA offers. I just want to kind of throw that out there. If you're interested, you can follow back up with Missy or Danielle, because our ultimate goal, of course, is to have educated exporters and create a pipeline to utilize SUSTA's wonderful services. Just a quick thing, when you do go through the training, we have a wonderful handout that provides all the links. So, it is very detailed. And then we also give you a little bit of homework too. But I just want to kind of throw that out there because it's been very useful. But at the end, this is the end of the training. We can go and take Q&A. But I'm just happy that you all kind of went through the course with me. It was a lot of information. Hope you found it to be very useful today.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Victoria. I found this to be useful myself, not just for the companies. So we had a lot of people that stayed on the entire time. So we do appreciate everyone's time to this webinar. And we thank you again, Victoria, for all the educational information. I was trying to see if we had any questions come through. And I do see one that has come through. Has anything changed with the export documents since COVID?
Well, really, the main things that we've seen, because like I said, they can be updated at any time, which is why you always want to make sure you check the date for that FAIRS report. Every country is different. But the one thing we've seen across the board is that they have made things more user friendly, and more things have gone online. And so that's been really helpful. Where they submit, or they provide the certificate, and then you can actually access the certificate in the foreign country online. And so have seen an increase in that. A lot more countries partnering with USDA to go ahead and receive those online certificates. So that's been the main thing, but not really because of COVID. There's changes all the time. That's why you always make sure you have to have those documents that are current and check those dates and make sure.
Okay. And then I guess with a company trying to export for the first time, do you think that maybe doing the homework to find out what certificates are needed first would be the way to go? Or would it be to secure a buyer? What would be the first step, you think?
Well, I mean, it's kind of chicken and egg. What we kind of do in our formal training course. So if you're new, go and sign up for it. It's really kind of teach you to kind of look at your most favorable markets using market research. Yeah, some of them are just going to be better than others with your tariffs, with free trade agreements, with other agreements. So you can pick out some of your top 3 markets and say, hey, these are really good. We want to explore this a little more, and then we can go ahead and learn the foreign import requirements for those top 3. Now, of course, SESTA has a wonderful trade mission to a country you love, and you're like, man, I want to go ahead. Are you at you're like at, Gulf Food, and you're surrounded by umpteen countries, right?
Yes.
Of course, you do not want to discount those opportunities. What this provides are tools, right? You can go, you'll say you ran across someone who's interested in your product, but they're from Finland. And you
Yeah.
don't know the requirements, right? So you'll have the links. You can go back to your hotel, pull up their requirements, and just kind of see. To me, it's just more of a useful thing. So start out by just, kind of looking at your major requirements, but never turn down an opportunity if it looks good. This just gives you the tools that you need to go ahead and figure out what you might need to export to that country.
Okay.
Right. So you're never caught off guard, or you're not sure, right? Or, oh, last minute you need an inspection, you didn't know. You have all the tools to make sure and that's why the FAIRS report is so good. It's so comprehensive. You'll know exactly what packaging, what labeling, if you have to change some of your product, because of course, one thing requires one type of dye, food coloring, and another country doesn't allow it. So you'll have all the tools you need, and you'll be a much more skillful exporter. And so I think that just gives the confidence to companies to participate in more SESTA things, right? Because oh, I didn't think about the Philippines, but let me check, right? And and it kind of really gives you that power. So twofold, while you're just kind of hanging out and kind of picking your countries, you can do that research, but then you also have the tools that whenever opportunities come up through SESTA or other through states or anything like that, you have the tools to really assess the markets properly.
And just a little plug for SESTA, to piggyback off of that, if companies ever have to change your packaging and labeling to a foreign language, or change them because of a regulation requirement, we can reimburse 50% for the cost of the printing of those new labels and to get them up to regulation requirements. So always keep that in mind when you're working with international buyers or trying to export as well. Do we have any other questions for Victoria? She's a great resource. Use her while she's here.
Well, I just want to point out, I think we kind of talked earlier, Missy, but a lot of this stuff, until you really start getting into the weeds, you don't know what you don't know, right?
Correct.
And these are generic tools only because once I say always time, every country is different, every product is different. So, it's an art, not a science. But as you start developing maybe your export plan, or you're looking at various markets, I do want to point out that SESTA has the helpline
We do.
available. And so, I'm going to be kind of tuning off, getting off this webinar. But as you are working through some of those countries and looking at the foreign import requirements and the certificates, if you have specific questions about a specific country, specific product, and as you kind of going in there and you get in the weeds, please utilize that resource. And then I know Missy's going to have that link to the helpline and the email, because that's what it's really for. As you go on your journey, you get stuck or you need more help, then that's a wonderful resource to utilize.
We are here to help, and thank you for that plug, because it is very important, and it's something that we introduced fairly newly with SESTA. We've had it for almost a couple of months, almost a year now, and so it's been a great tool for companies to have that access. I will say, again, as Victoria mentioned, this will be online, so you'll be able to go back and, catch anything that you may have missed during the webinar. And we will provide those links via email. If you guys, I'm going to open it up for one more chance to ask any last minute questions, but if not, I'll let everyone go and do some homework to do some research on what Victoria just mentioned, and hopefully you can have questions that you can ask her directly. I will provide her email address and information. She'll be copied on any email that I send out, which you will be getting before the end of the week. So you can contact her directly if you have any questions. But thank you, Victoria, again. And thank you for everyone who dedicated the time to sit through this today and learn a little bit more about certificates.
Thank you. Any questions, anybody?
No, I think that was it. I think they were just listening and taking notes, hopefully. But thank you, everyone. And
Perfect.
Victoria, thank you so much.
Thank you so much and have a wonderful afternoon.
You too. Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye-bye.